Director of Pastoral Service at the Johns Hopkins Hospital, to offer the invocation.
Let us pray. O God, awaken our hearts to the presence of your Spirit dwelling among us in this place. Many years of hard work and sacrifices by these young men and women and their families have preceded the celebration of this day. Remind them that they stand on the countless shoulders of others who made similar sacrifices to perfect the arts and sciences of the medicine they will practice, just as there will be countless others who will in turn stand on their shoulders. Prepare them for this challenge and this responsibility, which will depend not just on the knowledge they have acquired here, but their own unique gifts and talents and the integrity of their human spirits. Reward them plentifully with your shalom, your salem, the peace of God, which binds us all as children of the human community. In God's holy and majestic name we pray. Amen.
Please be seated. First, let me welcome everyone here today. Parents, relatives, and friends, and most importantly, the class of 1998. A day that you've worked toward for a long time has finally arrived. All of you, those earning their MDs, their PhDs, their masters in our fine arts as applied to medicine discipline, richly deserve the pride and joy you must feel at this moment. I think I know some of what you are feeling right now. I graduated from medical school, and I can't believe it, 30 years ago. But I also know that there are differences between then and now. Over the next 30 years, you will become the leaders of a new era of medicine. I graduated from the University of Rochester School of Medicine and Dentistry in 1968, and the link to Johns Hopkins is very strong. The Flexner Report, published in 1910, changed American medicine forever. The University of Rochester School of Medicine and Dentistry was the first institution built after the Flexner Report. And it was modeled after the School of Medicine here at Hopkins. And so I really do come from the same foundation that you have experienced over the past 4 years here. My remarks as Dean and CEO of Johns Hopkins Medicine are somewhat historic. When you started medical school, you had a dean. This is the first time that there has been a CEO of Johns Hopkins Medicine, which signifies the changes occurring in modern medicine. It demonstrates the fact that the healthcare system and the School of Medicine are working together in order to deliver the finest in healthcare. It also symbolizes that Johns Hopkins Medicine has once again taken a leadership role in redefining how modern medicine shall be practiced. Bringing the strength of the health system and the university together under one governance structure will enable us to meet our mission of research, teaching, and patient care. As you graduates enter the world of modern medicine, these structural changes will become much more important to you individually as you practice medicine. Commencement addresses or remarks by the dean should be brief, and I will try to observe that tradition. But let me reflect on my years in medicine to give you a few pieces of advice that I believe are important as you start on your medical career. First, care for those who are less fortunate than you. Each morning when I drive into East Baltimore, I look around and I see the plight of some of the residents. I question, am I really doing enough? You, as graduates, will undoubtedly work in medical centers where there will be a disproportionate number of the poor needing medical care. These are not teaching cases. These are real human beings that need your care and compassion. Try to understand where they have come from and how your sensitivity can make a difference in their lives. Remember also that this was a tradition that was established by Johns Hopkins himself. In a letter written in 1873, Mr. Hopkins stated, "In all of your arrangements in relation to this hospital, it is my wish and purpose that the institution shall ultimately form a part of that medical school of that university for which I have made ample provisions in my will. It will be your special duty to secure for the services of the hospital surgeons and physicians of the highest character and greatest skill. The poor of this city and state of all races who are stricken down by any casualty shall be received into the hospital without charge. This is our duty and must not be forgotten as we move forward." Second, take advantage of the technology and training that you have received here. You have been taught by some of the greatest minds in medicine. You have worked side by side with great clinicians, teachers, and researchers. We hope that in your 4 years of medical school, you were taught a method of learning. Many of the things that I learned in medical school no longer apply, and you will probably experience this, but the training that you have received here should allow you to continue to learn. Do not neglect your own continuing medical education. Without striving to obtain new information, you will not be able to advance the field of medicine and help alleviate the suffering of mankind. Third, be a citizen in everything you do. If you become a member of a medical staff, actively participate and take the high ground on important issues. There is much discussion now in the medical profession about the for-profit corporations and how to increase your own profits while simultaneously using your power to leverage others. Maintain your integrity. Do what is right for your patients. Look at what you're doing and say, is this something I really can be proud of when faced with some incredible dilemmas in treating patients or acting on boards or working with your colleagues? Be a citizen also, just not only in the medical community, but in the community where you live. You have been privileged to be trained at Johns Hopkins, and people will turn to you as a leader. Your actions will be scrutinized, and the moral ground upon which you stand will be pivotal for some people. Make sure you make wise choices. Fourth, care for yourself. Over the next many years, you will be under a great deal of mental and physical pressure during your internship and residency. I recently saw a quote from Thomas Jefferson which stated, "Without health, there is no happiness. An attention to health, then, should take the place of every other object." Remember that you have put a great deal of effort into your medical training, and you need to take time to replenish yourself both mentally and physically. We all get too busy, but remember, if you become ill, you will not be able to help others. So this should also be a top priority. Finally, remember that Johns Hopkins School of Medicine will always be your home. You have a unique opportunity to learn at a wonderful institution. I remember when I was halfway through my internship and I was very discouraged. I felt that I had made the wrong career choice then, having chosen surgery as my goal. I wasn't enjoying what I was doing, and I didn't see myself as a surgeon, to be truthful. I'd even thought of leaving the medical profession because I knew I could probably apply my abilities somewhere else. A phone conversation with my mentor at the University of Rochester, however, resulted in a letter from him suggesting various options that I could consider. I hope none of you become as discouraged as I at that time, but it may happen. And if it does, remember that we are here to help you through those hard times. Also, please keep Hopkins a priority throughout the rest of your life. This is a very special medical school. Alumni are scattered all around the world. In the last 4 years here, I have learned to appreciate the depth of the loyalty postgraduates have for this medical school. The gifts, the professorships, and the endowments are all examples of their commitment. These gifts that have been given over the last 105 years have allowed Johns Hopkins Medical School to continue to excel in the areas of research, teaching, and patient care. We truly are unique. No one can touch us. These same gifts have allowed the great teachers, clinicians, and researchers to spend time focusing and applying their skills, they've been given the necessary tools to do this. And it has helped us build the great institution you see today. The alumni are the strength of the institution, and now you are an alumnus. Again, to conclude my remarks, care for those who are less fortunate, take advantage of your teaching and technology, be a good citizen, care for yourself, and continue to be an active participant and contribute to this great medical school. Congratulations to you all. Today we are inaugurating the School of Medicine's Dean Medal and Chain of Office. It's pretty heavy too, I'll tell you. As you may be able to see, I am wearing it for the first time today. It is to be worn in academic celebrations, and the chain of office represents traditions dating back to the 16th century. This particular Dean's Medal and Chain of Office symbolized the leadership of Francis Watt Baker, MD, and Lennox D. Baker, Jr., MD, Deanship of the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine. The names of each of the former deans through the current dean are engraved on a silver circle along with the years of service. In anticipation of the future, the chain incorporates black silver circles to be engraved with the names and dates of appointments of all future deans. The engraved and black circles are joined together by silver triangles, which symbolize the tripartite mission of the School of Medicine: research, teaching, and patient care. The front of the medallion displays sculptured portraits of the founding Big Four: William H. Welch, William S. Halstead, Howard A. Kelly, and William Osler. These portraits, based on John Singer Sargent's rendering in the magnificent painting of the Four Doctors, symbolizes the School of Medicine's long and enduring heritage of excellence. On the reverse of the medal, there is a synergistic triangle of teaching, research, and patient care to symbolize the ongoing mission of the School of Medicine. Circling the triangle is the inscription of the Francis Watt Baker, MD, and Lennox D. Baker, Jr., MD, deanship to designate the authority of office and to commemorate the very generous endowment of the Baker family. Neil Erston, the sculptor of FDR, Eleanor, and Fala in the recently dedicated Roosevelt Memorial in Washington, designed and executed the sculptured portraits of the Four Doctors. John Harbold of our graphics art department designed the reverse of the medallion. And Henry Hopkins III, a silversmith from Baltimore, designed and executed the chain. An interesting sidelight is that 32 years ago, Henry Hopkins' father, also a silversmith, made the university president's medal and chain of office. And I'm very proud to wear this, and it symbolizes the beginning of a new deanship at Hopkins because of the support of the Baker family. I'd now like to move to the Society of Scholars. The induction ceremony for the Society of Scholars will be held this afternoon at 4 p.m., and thus many of the scholars are not able to be with us today. I would now like to introduce to you the Society of Scholar inductees who are with us today. Please stand and be recognized. Dr. Christine Seidman, Professor of Medicine, Harvard Medical School, and Dr. Klaus Victor Teutka, Professor and Chairman, Department of Neurology, University of Würzburg, Dean, Faculty of Medicine, University Medical School. Doctors Harvey Bender, Tibor Boris, Lonnie S. Burnett, Lanny Garth Close, Klaas Dolman, Andre Goffey, GBL Howell, Gianni Marone, Trevor Penning, Bertram Pitt, David C. Pritchard are unable to be with us today, but will be here later this afternoon at 4 o'clock. I would now like to introduce the Associate Dean for Student Affairs, Dr. Herlong.
It's my privilege to introduce John Krongeier, the medical student commencement speaker. A native of Gulf Breeze, Florida, John received his undergraduate degree in biology summa cum laude from the University of Mississippi. In recognition of academic excellence, I should point with an intact string of A's, John was named valedictorian of his senior class and inducted into numerous honorary societies, including Phi Beta Kappa. John's record of academic excellence continued here at Hopkins, but importantly, John explored beyond the boundaries of the traditional curriculum. Among his many extracurricular activities, he had a successful research experience in the Department of Neurosurgery, where he helped to develop novel therapies for brain tumors. After graduation today, John will be leaving Baltimore to complete postgraduate residency training at the University of Miami in neurosurgery. John, we look forward to your address this afternoon.
Thank you for that address. First of all, I'd like to say that it is truly a privilege to share the same stage with Dr. Herlong and Dr. Miller and to speak in direct procession of somebody as esteemed and accomplished as Dr. Nathans. On behalf of the School of Medicine, I wish to say in our graduating class that we are honored to be here today receiving induction into one of society's more challenging and more rewarding fields, and one which boasts a rich history laden with extraordinary men and women and their accomplishments. Indian culture gave us the first true hospitals, possibly as early as the 3rd century BC. The Greeks generously offered Hippocrates and Galen and their wisdom and insight, while the Chinese gave us Ni Ching with his canon of medicine. In 1628, the Englishman William Harvey described the flow of blood through the circulatory system and the beating of the heart with impressive accuracy. Much more recently, the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine opened its doors in 1893 with the vital assistance of Elizabeth Garrett and many other women. And very quickly, Oechsler, Welch, Halsted, and Kelly established themselves as the first of many greats to pace our hospital hallways and frequent the podiums of our medical school. However, medicine is poorly understood when described as a mere list of practitioners and their accomplishments. Likewise, we as graduates should never look at medical school as a time when certain courses were completed and specific skills were acquired. Medical school's most important contribution to us is not an understanding of molecular biology or anatomy, but rather an understanding of others, especially the sick, and an understanding of ourselves, so that hopefully one day we can become true healers. If asked for the most memorable moment in medical school, my class would assuredly generate a varied array of responses. Some would cite the first time they laid eyes upon the dome. Others might allude to the seemingly endless supply of notes that plagued our second-year existence. And still others might make reference to specific memories from their clinical rotations and possibly to patients they became especially close to and the joy and satisfaction they felt when those patients were successfully treated, or less fortunately, how they suffered grief and sorrow with passing of certain patients. My most memorable moment is one I think is fairly common, and so I will share it with you all. On a cool and rainy November morning, 3.5 years ago, I stood in a large laboratory room in scrubs, and with gloved hands, I slowly drew back the white sheet that covered the cadaver from my anatomy group. At that instant, I felt a flood of emotions, from disgust to indifference, from sadness to scientific distance, from curiosity and excitement to fear. Fear that I had chosen the wrong career, or that someday my ineptitude would result in someone else's death, or more selfishly, that eventually my loved ones and myself would end up in that deceased person's position. For the first time, we all had to stare death in the face, and we no longer had the luxury of turning away. But I do not mention such serious and sobering experiences in an effort to garner sympathy for our trials and tribulations. On the contrary, our time spent at Hopkins has been in many respects an enviable privilege. We leave medical school today as more enlightened, more mature, and hopefully more understanding individuals than we were 4 years ago when Dean Herlong and others welcomed us in Turner Auditorium. But that is not to say that our metamorphosis is at its conclusion, nor will it ever be. To become optimal physicians, both in capability and in compassion, we must constantly reinvent ourselves, both as professionals and as human beings. Even that, though, is not enough. We must continually set new goals and repeatedly raise our personal standards. We should not, to borrow a line from Shakespeare, grunt and sweat under a weary life. In short, we cannot toil myopically without regard to the world around us, lest we become technicians instead of physicians. We live in complex times, and medicine now finds itself in critical condition. In keeping with John Donne's philosophy, medicine is not an island and cannot be practiced in isolation. Politicians, administrators, pharmaceutical companies, attorneys, and a host of others dictate much of our practice. Too many doctors become coldly perturbed by this fact and resign themselves to merely complaining about what they interpret as a suffocating outside grip upon the throat of modern medicine. William Osler, though, warned us years ago in Equanimitas to foster imperturbability in our individual constitutions, and his prescription should be followed. While it is understandable that physicians with their long hours and extensive responsibilities feel poorly positioned to bring about positive change, it is not excusable for doctors, and therefore now us, to relinquish the reins of medicine to others under the false pretense that our responsibility is only to our daily routine. We must remain active in reforming medicine and its larger societal role. For instance, I will allude to one deep-rooted problem in medicine that requires remedy. Many doctors simply find themselves having to work entirely too much. There is nothing noble or admirable about a physician who never sees his or her wife or husband or children, who works in a state of utter exhaustion and in so doing places unnecessary risk upon his or her patients. Furthermore, the physician who has no life beyond the hospital is not able to recognize the richness and the breadth of life, and thus is probably incapable of recognizing why the lives of his or her patients are so very valuable. While the task of preserving medicine's strengths and simultaneously rectifying its weaknesses is a great one, so are the shoulders we stand upon. Medicine is a pragmatic field that diagnoses and treats problems daily with ever-increasing success. Physicians and other healthcare workers must take these same tested and proven techniques, along with creativity and innovation, and apply them to our field's contemporary problems. In the end, physicians and patients alike will both surely benefit, and medicine's next 100 years may be as remarkable as the last. Thank you.
I would now like to introduce the Associate Dean for Graduate Student Affairs, Dr. James Hildreth. James?
We have a long program today, so I feel compelled to keep my remarks short, but there are a couple of things that I would like to say. The earlier remarks by our dean, Dr. Miller, reminds us that Hopkins, this institution that we're so proud to be a part of, is in fact a society of scholars. Today in these graduates, we celebrate the achievements of three groups of scholars: physician scholars, scientist scholars, and artist scholars. And I'd like to say that this year, like all other years, the Master of Arts students as a group have received national recognition for their outstanding work, and these students are going to go off to the most coveted positions in their field, and we're extremely proud of them, and I offer them my congratulations. The achievements of the PhD students are no less stunning, and their work has implications for diseases ranging from AIDS to cancer. And if you look at the titles of their thesis work, you'll see the breadth and depth of what they've done. It's just absolutely amazing. And I'd like to say to the students, the PhD students, that very often as PhD students, it's easy to feel unappreciated and overworked and that nobody really recognizes you for how valuable you are. And I'd like to say that that's absolutely not correct because our faculty members are falling over each other to get you into their laboratories. That's just how important you are to us and to the institution. And I'd like to take this one last opportunity on behalf of all the faculty members to say simply thank you. And to remind you that some of you have not indexed your lab notebooks or cataloged your freezer boxes. You might want to stop by the lab and do that before you run off to your exciting careers. It's my pleasure now to introduce Amy Brisbane to speak on behalf of the PhD and master's students. Amy is a graduate of Washington University of St. Louis, where she came away with many honors too numerous to mention. She's also a graduate of the biomedical engineering program here at Hopkins, where she studied the perception of touch in the brain, and she's now doing some really exciting work in the same area as a postdoc at Duke. Amy?
Thank you, Dr. Hildreth, for those kind remarks. Fellow PhD and master's graduates of the School of Medicine, I am honored to speak to you, your family members, friends, mentors, and colleagues. During the past few years, we have sequestered ourselves in laboratories throughout the university, conducting biomedical research ranging from the peripheral circulatory system to the nervous system, and investigating research questions from the molecular to the systems level. Graduates, you may have been a student at Johns Hopkins for 2 years or for more than 10 years. During this time, you have received your master's and/or your PhD degrees, and you may have also accumulated bachelor's or MD degrees while at Hopkins. Clearly, we are a very diverse group, although small in number. Despite our diversity, we share some or all of the following experiences. We have all passed our graduate board examinations. We have been asked repeatedly by family members and friends, now what exactly are you studying? We have often wondered if we will ever finish, and my parents personally have wondered the same thing. We have often felt alone in our research studies. We have experienced bitter arguments with our thesis advisors, which have hopefully been reconciled. And eventually, we have all successfully defended our thesis work. As a result, there are more than 60 black books in the library with our names and the word dissertation on the spine in gold lettering. These books are the culmination of our work, our contribution to the university's reputation for excellence in biomedical research. The past few years have been a second adolescence, complete with growing pains, and now we have achieved a significant stage in academic adulthood. To quote Jerry Garcia, what a long, strange trip it's been. Today is a time for congratulatory remarks and for celebration. But more importantly, today is a time to thank those who have helped us through this long, strange trip. They encouraged us and showed faith in us when we felt discouraged. Though we worked individually on our research, their support proves that we were never alone in our pursuits. Family members, friends, mentors, and colleagues, open our black books to the page entitled Acknowledgements. On these pages, we pay homage to your support. On behalf of the master's and PhD graduates of 1998, I stand here to thank you again.
Thank you, Amy. Popular wisdom has it that most graduates don't remember who spoke at their commencement ceremony, let alone remember what the speaker had to say. Members of the class of '98, I predict that truism will not hold true for you. In a few moments, you will hear from one of Johns Hopkins and the nation's most distinguished scientists. Daniel Nathans is a 1978 recipient of the Nobel Prize and a 1993 recipient of the nation's highest scientific award, the National Medal of Science. The research for which he shared the Nobel Prize in Medicine or Physiology is a basis for much of today's genetic research at Hopkins and elsewhere. He used the restriction enzyme discovered by his colleague, Dr. Hamilton O. Smith, as biochemical scissors, showing that they cut DNA at specific sequences and thus could be used to analyze DNA. As the Nobel Prize Committee rightly predicted, the techniques Dr. Nathans developed in working with animal tumor viruses opened up new avenues to study genes of higher animals and to solve basic problems in developmental biology. Increased knowledge made possible by his research has helped in the understanding, prevention, and treatment of birth defects, other diseases, and cancer. Restriction enzymes have allowed scientists to assemble genes in new combinations, thus giving birth to the entire field of genetic engineering and allowing development of such products as synthetic human insulin, growth hormone, and interferon. Scientists don't do research for the prizes, Dr. Nathans explained to a reporter. They do it because they enjoy discovering or understanding an important phenomenon. The greatest reward is seeing your discovery lead to some practical application, and sometimes that's hard to foresee. But I was always confident that, in the long run, the study of basic genetic mechanisms would contribute to the well-being of people everywhere. Contributing to the well-being of people everywhere. Graduates, this is a goal I hope you will take from your years at Johns Hopkins and from this day. It is my distinct honor and privilege to introduce to you Dr. Daniel Nathans. Dan?
Thank you very much, Dean Miller. This is a very special day for all of you, graduates, families, and friends. I well remember, as Dr. Miller did, his own experiences on a similar day. It was good to see, as the procession proceeded into the hall, all the smiling faces, to feel again the excitement that I felt on my graduation from medical school, the anticipation that I had in what was ahead in internship and residency and beyond. And I'm really delighted to be able to share this celebration with all of you. In preparing my remarks for this occasion, I took the liberty of imagining that this was not such a large hall, that this was a more intimate setting, say with a small number of students after a dinner, and that I was asked to say a few words about the events and people who influenced me in my life in medical science, and what I learned that might be worth passing on to a new generation of physicians and medical scientists. I would prefer it if this were a conversation, but unfortunately, I'll have to do all the talking. I was steered toward medicine at an early age by my father, who always wanted a doctor in the family. Does that sound familiar to some of you? As the youngest of his 8 children, I was his last chance. In college, I was attracted to the natural sciences, and I liked the little bit of the life of our family physician that I saw, and I decided that medicine was a good choice for me after all. So off I went to Washington University in St. Louis with the full intention of returning to my hometown in Wilmington, Delaware, to practice family medicine. Washington University, like Rochester that Dean Miller described, was rebuilt on the Johns Hopkins model. It had a wonderful full-time and part-time faculty committed to teaching, to research, and to taking care of patients. A great deal of faculty effort was given to the medical courses and the clinical clerkships, and to individual students, again, on the Hopkins model. In the summer after my first year of medical school, I had a chance to do research with a man named Oliver Lowry, chairman of pharmacology at Washington University, and that experience opened up a whole new world for me, the world of medical science. Ollie, as everyone called him, devised a small project for me for the summer, and the two of us worked side by side at the bench, applying the micromethods that he developed for measuring various metabolites and enzymes in tiny slices of freeze-dried tissue. Ollie was a wonderfully benevolent human being and a gifted scientist. He devised most of the instruments that we used, including an optical scale that could weigh, a balance that could weigh single cells. He immediately treated me like a colleague, encouraging me to enjoy the great feast of biomedical science, and I did. That summer changed my life. I also had a later elective period in his department in which I taught medical students, and I was convinced that I wouldn't go back to my hometown, but I wanted to do research and teach and be a physician too. Another of my teachers in medical school, who had an important role later in my life here at Hopkins, was Barry Wood, chairman of medicine. Barry Wood was a graduate of Hopkins Medical School, and he was an intern and resident on the Osler Medical Service at Johns Hopkins Hospital. You may have seen the display about him in the Wood Basic Science Building, which is named for him. Wood became chairman of medicine at Washington University at age 32. He was a marvelous clinical teacher, devoted to his students, devoted to his faculty. He later returned to Hopkins as vice president for medicine and then director of the Department of Microbiology. I'll have more to say about him later. After graduation from medical school, I moved to New York at Columbia Presbyterian Medical Center, where I was an intern and later resident on the medical service headed by Robert F. Lerb, the son of a pioneer of modern cell physiology and also a former house officer on the Osler service at Johns Hopkins. He was a masterful clinician, a clinical scientist, and bedside teacher. His studies of adrenal insufficiency are still classics. His daily sunrise services, as they were called, with the house staff, were occasions to get his advice on very ill patients and to discuss the latest advances in medicine. He was a man of great breadth and culture and an absolutely inspiring physician. I also remember how he cared with very great tenderness for a friend of his father's who was hospitalized at Columbia, paying attention to all the little details that mean so much when you're ill. I left Columbia confirmed in my desire to be a scientist, a teacher, and a physician. My next move was to the National Cancer Institute in Bethesda, where I divided my time between caring for patients on experimental chemotherapy and research on recently discovered plasma cell tumors of mice that were a model for multiple myeloma in humans. What impressed me most was how little was known about the basic biology of cancer and how ineffective much of the available chemotherapy then was. But I was full of admiration for the clinical staff, headed by a man named Gordon Zubrod, a former faculty member at Johns Hopkins. By painful trial and error, they worked out the protocols that eventually contributed to the successful treatment and cure of childhood leukemia. My later interest in viruses that cause cancer was clearly influenced by this experience. Meantime, in the laboratory at the Cancer Institute, my studies of immunoglobulin synthesis by plasma cells sparked an interest in the fundamental problem of how cells make proteins, about which very little was known at the time. And I was very fortunate to find a postdoctoral position in the laboratory of Fritz Lippmann at the Rockefeller University in New York. The Rockefeller Institute for Medical Research, precursor to the university, had an intimate historic connection with Johns Hopkins. William Henry Welch, one of the people who appears on the Dean's Medal, and first Dean of Johns Hopkins, played a key role in its founding, and Simon Flexner, a student of Welch's, was its first director. Rockefeller was a wonderful place to do research. There were so many bright people, so much interesting science, from clinical investigation to biochemistry and biophysics. This was the period, a very exciting period in medical science, soon after the discovery of the double helical structure of DNA, followed by very rapid advances in understanding the molecular basis of heredity and gene regulation, the nature of viral infections, antibiotic resistance in bacteria. Many areas of biology were moving ahead with great speed. It was at the Rockefeller that I had my first sustained period of research. I began to develop a taste for scientific problems. Fritz Lippmann, a Nobel laureate, was best known for his recognition of the role of phosphate bond energy in biosynthetic reactions. ATP, he realized, was the common currency by which cells convert foodstuffs into useful energy. He would often pace up and down the hall, gazing at the ceiling, seemingly oblivious of everything around him, and then would wander into the lab and suggest a good experiment to one of his fellows. He had a remarkable talent for picking out the salient result in a sea of noisy data. Toward the end of my stay in Lippmann's laboratory, I decided I wanted to continue my research on protein synthesis, and that it would be difficult to combine that with clinical responsibility. So I shifted my search for a job from a clinical department to a basic science department of a medical school. And just at that time, I received a call from Barry Wood, after he had moved to Hopkins, who offered me a position in the Department of Microbiology. I came in the summer of 1962, and here I stayed ever since. Barry Wood was an ideal chairman. He led by example. He put a high value on teaching medical students, gave them a great deal of attention, and so it became a high priority for everybody else in the department. He also took pride in the accomplishments of his faculty, making sure they had the facilities and the time, encouragement, the collegial setting for doing creative research. Barry had been a star athlete at Harvard College, including an All-American quarterback. And he continued to think of life in an athlete's metaphor. One of his favorite notions was embodied in a phrase used by Judge Learned Hand in describing Benjamin Cardozo, Associate Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court. Hand said of Cardozo that he was, quote, stripped for the race, end quote, by which he meant, and here I quote again, free of all sorts of frustrated ambitions and hopes of preferment long since forgotten that determine our conclusions. That was Barry Wood. As the display about him in the Basic Science Building describes, his life was one of grace and achievement. A few years after I arrived at Hopkins, all the virologists left our department for more senior positions elsewhere, and Barry Wood asked me to give a series of lectures on viruses of medical significance in our medical course for students. Preparing those lectures stimulated my interest in viruses that cause cancer in animals. And to learn more about them, I took a leave of 6 months in the winter and spring of 1969 to work at the Weizmann Institute of Science in Israel, where some of the pioneering research on tumor viruses had been done. Toward the end of my stay at the Weizmann Institute, I received an interesting letter from a colleague in the microbiology department here at Hopkins, Hamilton Smith, bringing me up to date on his studies of a restriction enzyme that he had discovered that cut DNA at specific sites along the double helix. And here I want to correct something in the introduction. It was Smith and his postdoctoral fellow, Tom Kelly, who discovered that restriction enzymes cut DNA at specific sequences. And that letter stimulated me to wonder whether such enzymes would be useful in analyzing the functions of viruses that cause cancer, and in particular, what genes of the virus were involved in producing cancer and how they worked. I wrote to Ham Smith explaining my thoughts, and he was happy to supply his enzyme. When I returned to Baltimore, Stuart Adler, who was a medical student spending the summer in my laboratory, and I carried out the initial series of experiments with the viral DNA and restriction enzymes, and they worked. And there followed over a decade of a period of exhilarating discovery for my students, for me, and for Ham Smith and his students. Restriction enzymes became a basic tool in molecular genetics and DNA diagnosis of genetic diseases. So we all had the thrill of discovery and the enormous satisfaction of knowing that our work contributed to advances in basic science and medicine. Let me share some thoughts about genetics and medicine of the future. In a little over a half century, a very exciting half century in biomedical science, we've gone from the discovery that DNA is the chemical substance of heredity. 2, in the next several years, the complete nucleotide sequence of the human genome. Every day, one reads in the newspaper, often in the financial section, about the success of gene hunters in identifying health-related genes. The sometimes painful hyperbole aside, we have seen the enormous value of having even a small fraction of the 50,000 or so human genome sequences in hand, both in terms of the basic insights they allow and also their insights into disease mechanisms and applications in healthcare. The human genome sequence will be an enormous resource that is likely to drive discovery in basic biology and medicine for the foreseeable future. Genome sequences allow scientists to think in new ways, to do experiments more quickly, to test their ideas more easily, to develop entirely new approaches to medical problems. This new thinking will include greatly increased emphasis on prevention and early diagnosis of disease, at least delaying the onset of many of today's serious afflictions. All of this would take time. Not the 2 years to cure cancer, heralded recently in the New York Times, but many years and perhaps decades of creative research and clinical trials and sustained financial investment from the public and private industry. But it will be an enormously exciting and challenging time, both for scientists and for physicians. Genetic medicine is not free of controversy and problems. For example, the growing issue of the privacy of genetic information, that DNA testing makes it easy to accumulate on a vast scale. Scientists and physicians have a role to play in helping policymakers and the public understand what the issues are, and in particular, helping them to distinguish between reality and fantasy. But these are essentially larger issues, social and ethical issues. They transcend the special competence of scientists and require far broader perspective, as is recognized by the NIH Human Genome Project. As a society, we have to face the problems without sacrificing the great promise of the science. Now let me return to my personal story. 3 years ago, my rather orderly life was interrupted by an irresistible opportunity to serve as interim president of Johns Hopkins University. It turned out to be a great adventure, one that engages the entire person, often 7 days a week. In the course of that time, I gained a new perspective on the university and enormous respect for all the different people who make it work. Much of my time was spent on issues of healthcare affecting the School of Medicine and the health system. During this period, I was often asked by my faculty friends how I was doing. My answer was something like, fine. I sleep like a newborn baby. Every 2 hours, I wake up crying. Now then, did I learn anything in my experiences as a medical scientist and sometime physician and administrator that might be worth passing on? Some of you may be wondering, as I did, whether the experience of my generation is really relevant anymore. I think it is. Let me try to distill some lessons from my own career, and you can judge. First, aim high. Don't sell yourself short. If I had listened to all the whiffs of self-doubt along my way, I wouldn't have made it through medical school, let alone to the Hopkins faculty. Second, work at something you really enjoy and give it your best. Life is too short for anything less. Third, try to be surrounded by congenial colleagues who are brighter than you are. I learn most from my colleagues and from my students. Fourth, for those of you heading into medical practice, there'll be a great deal of new science and technology to keep up with, many administrative challenges. Please remember to care for the whole person. That is your patient. Medicine is an ennobling profession. It's more than applied science, and it's much more than the bottom line. Fifth, if you're headed for research, either at the bench or in the wider world of healthcare, choose an important problem and then dig deep. It's more likely to lead to an important contribution and is more satisfying. And sixth, in one form or another, teach. Even with all the information technology in the world, young people will still need flesh and blood examples. Heroes, if you'd like, and teaching will enrich your own life. Finally, I want to share an observation about Hopkins that I've made over the years. Virtually everyone who spends time here develops an uncommon affection for the place. Perhaps it's due to our connection with an historic past, an illustrious history. My hypothesis is that it's related to a peculiar virus, call it JHV, that gets into one's chromosomes and there expresses its genes for the rest of the host's life. In some cases, myself included, it gets into the germline and affects future generations. Unlike other viruses of its type, the sting of JHV is no more painful than that of a tiny arrow. However, it may loosen purse strings, and on appropriate occasions, it may cause those afflicted to hear the voice of Osler or Halstead or Welch or Kelly or Brodel or McCusick whispering in your ear, "Now don't you screw up, hon." My best wishes to all of you.
honored to announce the student awards. A number of awards have been previously acknowledged and are listed in your programs. This afternoon, I would like to recognize special awards and those that the students will learn about for the first time today. Medical students with outstanding records are elected to membership in Alpha Omega Alpha, the National Honor Medical Society. The following members of the graduating class have been elected to membership in Alpha Omega Alpha. Please stand when your names are called, and I would ask the audience to please hold your applause until all the students have been acknowledged. Benjamin Abella, Susie Asani, Sudha Balasubramanian, Jennifer Barker, Gail Birkenblit, Stephen Catanio, Adam Sharif, Michael Ellers, Neil Evans, Karen Foster, Stephen Haar, Mahir Johnny, Allison Klein, Allison Koenig, Alpa Lahari, Tanya Leinecke, Lisa Lockard, Avitas Manishian, Silas Smith, Serene Saruji, James Weller, and Maria Yamas. In recognition of excellent academic performance during their enrollment in the School of Medicine, the following students have been elected to Phi Beta Kappa: Neil Evans, James Weller, and Jia Zhu. Many students in the graduating class have previously been elected to Phi Beta Kappa during their undergraduate years. I would ask that those members of Phi Beta Kappa please stand. The Warfield T. Longcope Prize in Clinical Medicine was established in honor of Dr. Longcope, Director of the Department of Medicine. It recognizes the graduating student entering the field of internal medicine whose performance exemplifies in outstanding fashion the academic excellence and human qualities that mark the true physician. The recipient this year is Lisa Lockard. Lisa, would you please come forward? I should also point out that before coming to medical school, Lisa was a premier ballerina for the Western Ballet Company. So, a very talented person. The Helen and Harold Harrison Prize is awarded to the student recognized for outstanding proficiency in pediatrics. The recipient this year is Allison Koenig. The William Stewart Halstead Award in Surgery recognizes proficiency in the field of surgery. This year, there are two recipients, Steve Catanio and Andrew Cameron. The Sylvan Shane Prize in Anesthesiology and Critical Care Medicine recognizes the outstanding medical student making a career choice in anesthesiology. The recipient this year is Kelly Grogan. The Emily Sims Haller Prize in Obstetrics was created by colleagues, friends, and family of Dr. Emily Haller. It is awarded to the senior student showing outstanding promise in the field of obstetrics. The winner this year is Susie Asani.
For the David E. Rogers Award, I'd like to introduce Mr. Ronald Peterson, the president of Johns Hopkins Hospital and the Johns Hopkins Health System. Mr. Peterson.
The David E. Rogers Award for Community Service was first offered in 1995 following the death of Dr. Rogers in 1994. David E. Rogers, MD, embodied the qualities that are commemorated through these annual awards to outstanding graduates. A consummate physician and visionary leader of the medical profession, he was a professional in every sense of the word. He was guided by the highest ethical principles. When he died at the age of 68, David Rogers had already accomplished enough for several ordinary lifetimes. He was educated at Miami University of Ohio and Cornell University, and trained as an intern resident at Johns Hopkins. When he became the head of medicine and physician-in-chief at Vanderbilt at only the age of 33, he was the youngest person holding those key leadership positions at an American medical institution. Just 9 years later, in 1968, he returned to Hopkins as Dean of the School of Medicine and Medical Director of the hospital. Although his tenure as dean was relatively short, his lasting contributions to Johns Hopkins were great, ranging from the creation of the Medical School Council of Faculty to the establishment of the Department of Neurology and Biomedical Engineering to the recruitment of a markedly increased number of African American students. He also helped transform the way in which medical care was delivered by launching a health maintenance organization, the Columbia Medical Plan. In 1972, Dr. Rogers became the first head of the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, in which position, over the course of some 15 years, he cultivated a reputation as the articulate conscience of the medical profession, in the words of one of his colleagues. During the 15 years that he led the nation's largest charity devoted to healthcare, he displayed a consistent interest in the problems of the poor and the underserved, and he brought a new level of academic attention to the study of the nation's healthcare delivery system. Until the end of his life, David Rogers continued to serve as co-chairman of the National Commission of AIDS. He was widely recognized with awards from the United Hospital Fund and others for his leadership in the battle against HIV and his compassion for those touched by the disease. Here and elsewhere, David Rogers was a professional and a leader. It is our hope that this year's recipients of the David E. Rogers Award for Community Service will display throughout their careers the same qualities of character and courage that so distinguished him. This time I'd like Dr. Miller to join me at the podium, and we are pleased to announce that the 1998 David E. Rogers awardees are Richard C. Nowitzki and Mary Elizabeth Harmon. Will you both please come forward? Thank you very much.
I promise we're getting there, folks. In the next few moments, we will be presenting a number of awards to the faculty. The first is the W. Barry Wood Jr. Award for recognition of outstanding preclinical teaching. Was granted by the class of 1994-95 and 95-96 to Dr. Jeremy M. Berg of the Department of Biophysics and Biophysical Chemistry. Would Dr. Berg please stand and be recognized? The House Staff Award recognizes outstanding clinical teaching by a member of the House staff, emphasizes the importance the students attach to the concept of House officers as teachers. The House officers receiving the award this year is Dr. Marcela Del Carmen of the Department of Gynecology and Obstetrics. Would you please join me? The Graduate Student Teaching Award recognizes that faculty member whose skills as a teacher, role model, and advisor are regarded as exemplary by graduate students. The member of the faculty receiving this award this year is Dr. Mark Schischel, Associate Professor of Medicine and Oncology with a joint appointment in Molecular Biology and Genetics. Please join me. The George J. Stewart Award is presented to an outstanding clinical teacher in the School of Medicine who is selected by the senior students. The recipient this year is Dr. Brent Petty in the Department of Medicine. Dr. Petty? The Johns Hopkins University Alumni Association Excellence in Teaching Award, established in 1992 by the Johns Hopkins University Alumni Association, recognizes the critical importance of teaching at Johns Hopkins. Dr. Donald S. Coffey of the Department of Pharmacology and Molecular Sciences, Urology, and Oncology was chosen to receive this award. Dr. Coffey? The recipient of the Professor's Award for Excellence in Teaching is nominated by professors on our faculty and selected from amongst those nominations by a committee of faculty, professors, and representatives of House staff, medical students, and graduate students. The winner of the Professor's Award for Excellence in Teaching in the Basic Sciences is Dr. Bill Giginome, Professor of Physiology and Pediatrics. Bill? Dr. John Cameron, Alfred Blaylock Professor of Surgery and Professor of Oncology, has been selected to receive the Professor's Award for Excellence in Teaching in Clinical Years. Dr. Cameron. The Rannis W. Crosby Distinguished Achievement Award was established in 1986 in recognition of the outstanding contributions to the visual communication of medical science. The recipients of the Rannis W. Crosby Distinguished Achievement Award are Dr. Donald A.B. Lindberg, Director of the National Library of Medicine, and Dr. Michael J. Ackerman, the library's Assistant Director for High Performance Computing and Communications. Will Dr. Lindberg and Ackerman please come forward? The Dean's Special Recognition Award is given for exceptional service to the institution by a member of the Johns Hopkins family. The recipient of the Dean's Special Recognition Award is Dr. Daniel Nathans. Earlier, I spoke of Dr. Nathans' extraordinary contributions to the well-being of people everywhere. A member of the National Academy of Sciences and the American Physiological Society, he has also served on the Presidential Council of Advisors on Science and Technology. Yet he has never been too busy to serve Johns Hopkins when we have needed him. Now University Professor of Molecular Biology and Genetics, Dr. Nathans has been a devoted faculty member for more than 3 decades. For 11 of those years, he serves as the department director, first of the Department of Microbiology and then of the renamed Department of Molecular Biology and Genetics. He is also a senior investigator of the Howard Hughes Medical Institutions at Hopkins. Happiest when he can go to his laboratory and do what he loves best, answer scientific questions and teach, Dr. Nathans nonetheless agreed to serve as interim president of Johns Hopkins University, a post he held from June of 1995 until August of 1996, a time that I got to know him very well, I must say. Asked why he accepted the job, he replied, "I've always considered it a privilege to be here, to lead the kind of life Hopkins has given me the opportunity to lead. It's a great feeling to start your own research program and be given the time, facilities, and support, and to know what comes out of it is up to you. I like to preserve that feeling for others." Daniel Nathans, it has been our privilege to have you here among us at Johns Hopkins School of Medicine for so many years. We hope you will continue to grace us with your kindness and your wisdom for many years to come.
Recipients of the degrees Master of Arts and Doctor of Philosophy will be hooded by faculty members selected by the graduates. Recipients of the degree Master of Arts, please come forward so that we may present you with your diploma and hood. Mr. Timothy Phelps, Associate Professor of Art as Applied to Medicine, will begin by hooding the first master's graduate. John Gibb. Thomas Graves. Kenneth Hyman. Hawk Quo. William Scavone. Krista Townsend. Will the recipients of the degree Doctor of Philosophy now come forward to receive their hoods? The degree will be conferred and diplomas presented at tomorrow's university commencement. These students have formed a relationship with our faculty members that has spanned 4 to 6 years, and the faculty members have been asked by some of the students to serve as their hooders. So these faculty members you see placing the hoods are, for the most part, those persons that they did their PhD work with. Dr. Steve Balin, come forward, please. Eleanor Carson Walter. Margaret Beal Johns. Lisa McGregor. Dr. Phil Beachy, please come forward. Donald Jackson. The next group of students will be hooded by Dr. Berg. Sudha Balasubramanian. Amy Brisbane. Michael Ellers. Professor of Art as applied to medicine will begin by hooding the first master's graduate. John Gibb. Thomas Graves. Kenneth Hyman. Hoc Quo. William Scavone. Krista Townsend. Will the recipients of the degree Doctor of Philosophy now come forward to receive their hoods? The degree will be conferred and diplomas presented at tomorrow's university commencement. These students have formed a relationship with our faculty members that has spanned 4 to 6 years, and the faculty members have been asked by some of the students to serve as their hooders. So these faculty members you see placing the hoods are, for the most part, those persons that they did their PhD work with. Dr. Steve Balin, come forward, please. Eleanor Carson Walter. Margaret Beal Johns. Lisa McGregor. Dr. Phil Beachy, please come forward. Donald Jackson. The next group of students will be hooded by Dr. Berg. Sudha Balasubramaniam. Amy Brisbane. Michael Ellers. weighing pen. Wade Sun. Todd Waldman. Zan Zhao. Dr. Bulkey, please come forward. Eleanor Featherstone Hoff. Dr. Janice Clements, please come forward. Nicole Kenzie. Dr. Chu Dang, please come forward. Christine Dold. Brian Lewis. Dr. Ted Dawson, please come forward. David Adamson. Dr. Dewan. Dr. Eugene Dewan. Robert Greenberg. Dr. Gibson. Mary Elizabeth Harmon. Scott Plafker. Carl Hoffman. Dr. Ken Johnson, please come forward. James DiCarlo. Dr. Sajan Lee, please come forward. Alexandra McFerrin. Dr. Maloney. Man Chao Fan. Dr. Manis. Dr. Paul Manis. Scott Molitor. Dr. Marban. Ravi Ranjan. Dr. Shukas and Dr. Shram. David Cantor. Michael Egan. It's being hooded by Dr. Silicano. Next three students will be hooded by Dr. Saul Snyder. Andrew Cameron. Noam Cohen. Rhonda Zachary. Dr. Kathy Wilson will hood Tracy Michelle Gant. Catherine Hyland, being hooded by Dr. Forrest Spencer. Dr. Winslow, please come forward. John Rice. Paul Worley, please come forward. Gregory Lyford. Dr. Don Zach, please come forward. Ching Shen Jessica Lee. Dr. Chesney, please come forward. Joseph Mankowski.
Would the candidates for the degree of Doctor of Medicine please come forward so we may present you with your diplomas and hoods. Benjamin Abella. Corey Adamson. Nael El Abdullah. John Allegretti. Eric Amundsen. Brett Andres. Susie Asani. Kenji Asakura. Rendell Ashton. Sudha Balasubramanian. Jennifer Barker. Jan Bautista. Gail Birkenblit. Rochelle Bernacki. Han Bowie. Andrew Cameron. And it's being hooded by his father, Dr. John Cameron, who's on our chairman of our Department of Surgery. Alexander Carbo. Stephen Catania. Kirk Chantak. Connie Chan. Adam Sharif. Colleen Clendenin. Noam Cohen. Anthony Koya. John Cooley. Andrea Cox. John Krongaya. Kelly Culpepper. Ruth Davidon. Garvin Davis. And Griffin Davis. They are, in fact, two different people. James DiCarlo. Michael Ellers. Angela Allison. Brenda Emu. Darren Epstein. Neil Evans. Ugochukwu Nzenkwo. Vadim Finkelstein. Amy Fleischman. Karen Foster. Alan Gerstel. Rachel Gorwitz. Morris Gottlieb. Shamini Govinder. Mark Grasso. Ruth Graupera. Robert Greenberg. Kelly Grogan. Sarada Guru Bhagavatula. Douglas Albert. Stephen Parr. Jennifer Harris. John Harris. Stephanie Holmes. Julie Abramson Holman. Cynthia Hsu. Mahir Johnny. Ada Kagumba. Wango Khashoggi. Peter Kim. Sue Kim. Allison Klein. Klein. Allison Koenig. Krista Olsen Jugajeski. Alpa Lahiri. Langdon Lawrence. Tanya Leineke. Raphael Levin. Lisa Lockhart. Gregory Lubinyecki. Gregory Lyford. Susan Mani. David Marsh. Bijoy Matthew. Setu Mazumdar. Lisa McGregor. Deborah McWilliams. Avitas Manishian. Olitha Minto and daughter. Eric Monroe. Maureen Mwanake. Jumana Nagawala. Richard Nowitzki. Cheryl Pan. Sunil Parikh. Valerie Perel. Jamie Perry. Kathy Pooler. Edwin Posadas. Kurian Huthan-Paraya. Austin Ratner. Jennifer Rosenblum. Guy Schmidt. Brian Schaefer. Shafali Shah. Rachel Sherman. Christopher Shee. Jason Silvers. Craig Smith. Silas Smith. Alexander Sragovich. Serene Saruji. Jean Steppo. Stephanie Stevenson. Teng Tai. Simon Suris. Michael Hermel. Francis Valdez. Cornelia Van Koop. Lee Wachtel. Tamikia Wakefield. Todd Waldman. James Weller. Michael Wiedeker. David Wolk. Christine Wu. Maria Yalamas. And Rhonda Zachary.
And finally, we now pause to recognize the marshals and hooders who have participated in this ceremony. These individuals have been selected by the students and therefore are honored by them. Will the marshals and hooders please stand, and may I ask everyone to join me in a round of applause for these faculty members?
It's a lovely moment. About 2,400 years ago, on the island of Kos, Hippocrates fostered the advocacy of the patient that is at the heart of medicine. I've had the privilege of sharing in that advocacy for more than 50 years, and I thank each of you so much for giving me now the privilege of sharing with you the moment in which you too take up that responsibility. With those of you who received today the degree of Doctor of Medicine, please stand. And would you repeat after me? I do solemnly swear by that which I hold most sacred that I will be fully committed to those I serve and just and loyal to the profession of medicine and its members. That I will lead my life and practice my art in uprightness and honor. That into whatsoever house I shall enter, it shall be for the good of the sick. To the utmost of my power, holding myself aloof from wrong, from corruption, and from the tempting of others to vice. That I will exercise my art solely for the care of my patients, and will give no drug and perform no operation without justifiable purpose, far less suggested, that whatsoever I shall see or hear of the lives of men and women, which is not fitting to be spoken, I will keep inviolably secret. These things I do promise. And in proportion as I am faithful to this my oath, may happiness and good repute be ever mine. The opposite if I shall be forsworn. God bless you all.
Before I close with a benediction, I want to share just a few words of encouragement and challenge as you embark on your career in healthcare. I once overheard a chief resident asking a department chair some questions about the secret of a successful career in medicine. This highly regarded faculty physician paused for a second and said, "I can give you an answer in only 2 words: good decisions." Well, the resident wasn't satisfied. "I believe you, but how do you know how to make the right decisions?" "Well, I can answer that question with 1 word," said the faculty member: experience. The resident still wasn't satisfied. But how do you get experience? The faculty member said, "I can also answer that one in 2 words: bad decisions." Get your experience and give yourself the space to do that. As you know, the politics and the business of healthcare is in quite a muddle these days, and no one knows what things will be like in 2 years, let alone 20. These political and business aspects of healthcare will profoundly affect your decisions on how you practice medicine, whether you like it or not. But managing to care about your patients may be more important to your practice than managed care. And compassionate perception may sometimes serve you better than prescription. An attentive ear may occasionally be of greater use than skilled hands. And high touch may provide greater comfort than high tech. It is only these aspects of the art of medicine that can touch the human soul and spirit, for care remains even when cure cannot be found. Now may God grant you the courage and wisdom and skill and confidence to face the difficult and challenging days ahead. And may you also make the time for the joy of family and friends on this special day and every day. Blessings on you all. Amen.